The State Department says today there is no evidence that Iran is improving its treatment of women and playing down what it called an ambiguous claim from a senior Iranian official that the regime is loosening its hijab law and disbanding the feared morality police. A senior administration official also told me that the claim of any relaxed enforcement could be propaganda in advance of 3 days of planned protests by the women and their supporters. NBC News Tehran Bureau Chief Ali Arouzi joins me now live from London. Ali, it's good to see you. So let's start on the skepticism from the government here about the morality police being disbanded. First of all, my understanding is that they've largely been off the streets for several months, and there's no comment from Iran's supreme leader or other supreme leaders, other top leadership or police or state media for that reason. What is your assessment of this one comment from one of the prosecutors?
Well, Andrea, it's deliberately convoluted, and that's what they do there when they're scrambling. They don't want to give a clear message out, and it's unlikely they're going to be disbanded altogether. The argument that's raging within Iran right now is the hardline elements are saying this should be enforced remotely, not physically, by cameras. If women are caught without their hijab, then they should be fined. They don't get their insurance. More moderate elements, or so-called moderate elements, are saying that, well, maybe this should be decriminalized. And that shows the chasm within the system. But the reality is they can't enforce it anymore, Andrea, because about 60% of the women across Iran refuse to wear the headscarf or the manteau. So if they wanted to enforce that, they've got to arrest about 60% of the female population, and that's just not tenable for them. They're having problems, curtailing these protests, let alone stopping women on the streets in huge numbers because they're not wearing a headscarf. So this was the result of a critical mass. Women in Iran said, we're not going to wear this anymore, and the authorities simply couldn't do anything about it.
Ali, in my conversation with the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, this weekend, she spoke about the multiple challenges that the regime faces. You know this so well, including the protests and also the economy. Take a listen.
When we look at how this is developing, when we look at it combined with the economy, for example, which really is having extraordinary challenges right now, they are really having challenges, and even nationwide seeing sporadic close downs of businesses and things like that. And I think, from our perspective, that's one of those things that will lead to a greater risk of unrest and instability over time. But it is not something that we see right now as being a sort of, again, an imminent threat to the regime. And we see the regime continuing to crack down on this quite violently, and, that they are poised to do more, even as we see some kind of controversies even within them about exactly how to respond within the government.
The U.S. is spending millions of dollars a month to protect former officials from Iranian threats.
Yeah.
To what degree has the Revolutionary Guard penetrated the U.S.?
I can't go into details about the operational piece, but I will say that we continue to see the IRGC, the Quds Force, basically, and frankly, other Iranian intelligence services just continue to pursue increasingly aggressive actions, and, in part as in response to the Soleimani death and, as a reprisal for that. But really, across the board, they are being extraordinarily aggressive, going after both domestically and abroad dissidents and others.
And that conversation came just a few hours, Ali, just before those comments by the Iranian official about disbanding the morality police. But it certainly is confirming what we have been, hearing from leaders here, former officials as well, who are under round-the-clock security, millions and millions of dollars being spent on anyone who had to do anything to do with Iran policy because of what they've confirmed were threats, and this is happening around the world.
Yeah, they're absolutely, and because they're lashing out right now, Andrea, because they're in a corner. There hasn't been this wave of disapproval in the international community against Iran in as long as the time as I can remember, and that's made them nervous, and that's making them act much more aggressively. The violence in Iran is incredible, the wanton violence. I've never seen it on a scale like that in Iran, and they're also extremely worried about the economy. The country is no longer really functioning as a state. Most businesses are not really functioning. People don't buy anything unless they're the essentials. So in many ways, many civilians are striking themselves by not buying goods. Shop workers are not opening up. And that's also really worrying the authorities, because as the economy crumbles, then more people will come out onto the streets because they have nothing to lose.
And of course, Iran also now helping Russia in a very big way in Ukraine. Ali Arizi, thank you so much. Your deep knowledge of the real context from Iran is just invaluable. Thank you.